And now for our next presenter, we have Dr. Kamaljit Sangha from Charles Darwin University. Kamaljit will be presenting on the costing of natural disasters and assessing cost-effective community solutions. Thank you, Kamal.
Thanks, Desiree. Good afternoon, everybody. Before I start, I wanted to say, Peter, I hope you are online. You were exactly looking like an alien sitting in the satellite on this big screen, sharing news about fire and fire management with us on planet Earth.
It's very cold up here too.
Oh, we are all good up here in the north. So to start my talk, I work at the Darwin Center for Bushfire Research as an ecological economist under the bigger project that Jeremy has highlighted, building resilience in remote communities. So for this project, my colleague, Dr. Andrew Edwards, and I've been having a lot of workshops in remote communities, a lot of conversations over the last 3-4 years. One of the things that has troubled me over the years is that why we do not have culturally appropriate emergency management arrangements in remote communities, except for a few in North Queensland and some in the Kimberley. Why we haven't done that work so far. And one of the reasons for this is we haven't understood the cost of natural disasters appropriately. And that's how our policies are not developed in the right way. And I'm going to share some of those aspects, the cost related to natural disasters that should be embedded in our policy decision-making, particularly from northern context that could help us to update our policies and the policy arrangements that we are operating in the north. And that offers us a lot of solutions that could be very cost-effective solutions, both for the government and the indigenous parties. So you all are aware of that we experience a wide range of natural disasters in the north. You name it, it's here except for hailstones. So we got wildfires, we got plenty of cyclones coming every year. We get floods, storms. You say it and it's there. You have heard about fire in the north. I just wanted to highlight in the NT, all that red area or the yellow area in this map. Over the last 10 years, from 2009 to 2010, all these areas gets burned at least 5 to 6 times. So you can see the extent and the frequency of fire. Apart from that, we also get lots of floods. In this map, you can see there are more than 20 coastal communities. So each of those coastal communities, they have a river flowing nearby, or the community is settled on the river banks. For example, Robinson River community, there is a Robinson River flowing here. Borroloola, there is MacArthur River flowing there. Daly River community up here, there is a Daly River flowing there. Quite often, this is the situation for those rivers and streams, that there is no bridge there. So the communities get cut off during the wet season. In the late dry season, we get fires from September to November, and then the big wet season comes in, and then for extended period of time, those communities are cut off. So throughout the year, one or the other natural disasters keep on coming and going. But when we look at the Australian Disaster Declaration Database, it's very interesting to note that our bushfires are not recorded there. So the one that exists is that August 2011 bushfires in Central Australia. And if we look at the floods, they are almost annual events in those remote communities, but very few gets recorded here. So there is something fundamentally wrong the way we record our things and we develop our policies. I just want to provide a brief context here so we are all on the same page. So from NT perspective, we have a total population of about 245,000 people, which have obviously increased after COVID-19. About 150,000 people have moved in from other states. Indigenous population comprises about 25% of that total population, and we have 96 major and minor remote communities, apart from about more than 600 outstations. Most of these indigenous communities, they're dispersed across the landscape, unlike non-indigenous communities who are settled in big cities like Darwin or Catherine. And these communities, they experience these floods, cyclones, bushfires, one event after another throughout the year. And there are many intangible losses. That's one thing I wanted to highlight. Intangible means something that hasn't got the market value, but it doesn't mean that that particular thing hasn't got a value at all. So these losses, we don't have the right kind of mechanisms to account for these losses. And that's one thing that I'm trying to highlight in this presentation. If we start accounting properly for the losses, we may come up with better policy arrangements. For example, archaeological sites, there are more than 8,000 all across the NT. So for me, when I look at the way indigenous people have been managing their landscape, it is more or less a cultural landscape. So there are hundreds and thousands of cultural sites embedded throughout the landscape. So they are the cultural assets for people, and we have to look after them. And managing those cultural assets doesn't just help the indigenous mob, but help many of us sitting away from those landscapes. They deliver services, ecosystem services that are valuable for our well-being. So when we look at assessment of natural disaster related losses, the key assessment that has been done by the Australian Business Roundtable for Disaster Resilience and Safer Communities, back in 2017, they estimated the total economic cost about $18.2 billion per year. And that was a long-term study over 10 years. And for the NT, those costs are about $50 million a year. And most of these costs are based on, they have been stipulated from Cyclone Tracy experience. So they are based just accounting for cyclone in the NT, nothing else. And I have put the other figures there as well. So when you look at the assessments, the way ABR has done, they have looked at direct tangible costs, which are the costs for loss of infrastructure, indirect tangible costs, which have happened as a consequence of that natural disaster, which is like business disruption, and intangible costs, which are human health loss, injuries, loss of cultural sites, and things like that. So they have clubbed together these intangible losses under one category, whether they are direct or indirect. But we try to follow the World Bank framework for assessing those natural disaster related losses. So under that World Bank framework, they got direct losses and indirect losses. And under each of those losses, they have specified marketable and non-marketable losses, which is really good to work out from our context here in the North to see which are our direct losses and how much of those losses are accounted in the market, how much are not accounted in the market, and what could be the right mechanism to account for those losses, because they do matter for people. So when we look at the total losses for the NT, this is a detailed study that we have done over the years. So I'm giving just a very snapshot. The total losses are about $156 million a year, unlike the ABR study that has been done saying about $50 million a year. And most of these losses, they are non-marketable. So we have specially accounted for bushfire losses to the ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are the benefits that people obtain from managing their ecosystems. So if we started accounting for bushfires that are of size greater than 100 square kilometers, they cost about $95 million a year. So we want to highlight these losses because in the North, people have got their cultural assets embedded everywhere throughout the landscape. And if we do not account for these losses, we are misinterpreting what is our loss. And hence we are misinforming our policies. So there are cyclones that cost similarly $7.6 million for just loss of ecosystem services. This is not including the infrastructure cost. If we look at just the marketable costs, that's the standard way of accounting for these losses, it's about $5.6 million a year. So that's the Insurance Council Australia database. And if we look at the marketable indirect losses, they're about $47 million. So indirect losses, the direct, but non-marketable losses that should be accounted in a policy decision-making, they're worth about $103 million. I'm very happy to answer any questions related to this in detail or provide the detailed documents and the papers that we have got in this context. Just to provide you a case study about Daly River community, this community is settled up here on the banks of the river. As you can see, this is the Daly River. And it's about 200 kilometers south of Darwin up here. This particular community experiences floods every year. And the NT government or the departments associated with emergency management, federal and the territory ones, they experience a cost of about $3.8 million a year. And we look at the annual cost of flooding and monsoon troughs just in the NT, that's about $7.5 million. And if we account for over the last 19 years, the total cost is about $68 million. So it's a huge cost when we start accounting for each minor and these frequent kind of events, which are often ignored in our national databases. So the key messages from this study is that there are significant non-marketable losses. So the non-marketable losses are, I want to highlight again, that these are not the ones that don't have any value. These are the ones we don't have the right mechanism to account. We don't have the price tag to attach a price to these losses. But that doesn't mean that these losses should be ignored. They should be appropriately included in our policy decision making. And these kind of losses, they comprise about 2/3 of the total loss. There are several frequent and minor events that happen across the north, actually across the northern part of Australia, each costing between about $1 to $4 million a year, which need to be listed in our national database. If we keep on ignoring these frequent but minor events, then we are in a huge loss, understanding what are the losses related to natural disasters. So typically those minor events, they cost about any minor event that costs less than $10 million a year. They're not considered in our national databases when we are accounting for natural disaster related losses. But in the north, I would like to emphasize that these are very important to consider because people's cultural assets are embedded throughout the landscape, and we do need to consider any losses which are minor and frequent across the north. There are some possible solutions if we want to mitigate these losses and to inform the policy decision making in a culturally appropriate way. We can involve Indigenous people in this emergency management sector much more actively than what's happening now. And there is an economic rationale behind it. If we look at the cost savings, just the welfare cost savings, and the way it will empower Indigenous people in remote communities where there are little other economies existing at the moment except for carbon. And it will reduce their domestic violence rate in those remote communities and the incarceration rates. The total value of those cost savings for the NT over a year is about $31 million. So that's a huge cost saving if the government could invest this kind of cost saving into developing culturally appropriate emergency management mechanisms. So when we talk about building resilience in remote communities, following the document that Jeremy highlighted earlier, Keeping Our Mobs Safe, which is a COAG document published back in 2007 and haven't been much changed since then on ground. There are real benefits to build resilience in remote communities across the north. There are many on-site and many off-site benefits for people living all across Australia. So the biggest advantage is the Indigenous communities are dispersed throughout the landscape, unlike many non-Indigenous communities. They're permanently living there. They're not the ones who are just coming and going. They got proper cultural understanding, and people have got significant land rights. What we need to do is actually to start these intersectoral dialogue across the agencies and building up emergency management partnerships. And we've been lucky here up in the north. At least we had a start with that intersectoral and emergency management, building those partnerships. Yesterday we had a first ever that kind of dialogue that has started in the north with the emergency management agencies and the indigenous stakeholders. And it is a long way to go, but I hope with that workshop that we had yesterday, there is a way forward. And I would like to thank all our indigenous communities we've been working with and being able to develop this understanding what's happening in that emergency management space, and Bushfires Natural Hazards CRC for supporting this work. And these are the references at the end. In case anyone is interested, can drop me an email and I'm happy to send the papers across. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Kamal, for your presentation. And I'd like to see whether you have any questions for Kamal from the floor or online. Do you have any questions? While you're bringing up your questions here, could you, Kamal, explain to us what is it you are hoping, what is, in an ideal world, what are you hoping to do? What is, if you had one wish out of what you're doing, what would it be?
So especially in this emergency management space, to build culturally appropriate emergency management mechanisms in remote communities, to work with the communities themselves, what they want, and then to develop effective partnerships to support them in their work.
Kamal, thanks for the presentation. You presented a slide where you talked about the cost savings that the Northern Territory could achieve. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you arrived at the large numbers and what assumptions you made in what we needed to achieve them?
Yes, they do look large numbers, John, but they're very conservative numbers still. When we look at the cultural assets that's been embedded throughout the northern landscape. So for bushfires, to count the loss, we looked at bushfires that are of size greater than 100 square kilometers. That's based on the patchy burns that traditional owners been doing in the north, because the normal size is about 1 to 100 hectares. And this is far beyond that, the size that we have taken. So we have looked at all the hot burns, hot wildfires that have happened over the last 10 years. And then we looked at the loss of ecosystem services, used the management costs for parks and national parks that are across the north. We collected this data for more than 100 parks. So we looked at per square kilometer costs, and we used the relevant figures for each state and territory. So that's for the bushfires. But for the cyclones, similarly, we looked at the cyclones which are of category 3 or more. So, and the area damaged. So we took only 5% of the total area damaged. So that's why I'm saying it's very conservative compared to if we see that with cyclone of category 3 or 4 or 5, sometimes the whole landscape gets smashed. But we took only 5% of that area, and we used the surrogate for loss of ecosystem services.
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges we've got, and we've looked at those sorts of costs for a range of things, and the group in Western Australia have done some work around that as well. It's in dealing with it because people haven't, I guess, dealt with those sorts of values and the scale of them much in the past. It's the transparency of how we go with what we think the per unit cost is to come up with the large numbers. And I'm not challenging that your numbers are right. It's more making sure that when we talk about those, there's a very easy story that people who are reading them can look at and say, this is how I get from the start to the finish.
Yes, I agree. But the earlier studies that has been done here in Australia, especially the loss of ecosystem services from bushfires, they have actually used the surrogate from international studies, where we have used the regional surrogates. That's the data that we have collected locally. So it's a much more relevant data to the northern context that we are very comfortable with highlighting those values, John. And I'm very happy to share the publications that we have got out of these studies.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kamal, for the wonderful presentation, and thank you for your questions, John.